Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about how to solve polynomial equations of degree greater than or equal to 3. So the big idea here is we want to see how we can use what we learned with quadratics to help us with cubics, which is degree 3, and quartics, which is degree 4, and etc. Okay, and is there a way that we can do this? There is, and factoring is always a good idea for solving any sort of polynomial equation, assuming you have 0 on the other side. So for example, if I want to solve this, a natural thing to do here is take all my terms to the other side. X to the 4th minus 48x squared equals 0. Now we can go ahead and factor this side, and we get x squared times 3x squared minus 48, and actually we can pull out a 3 as well. So if we do 3 there, we get x squared minus 48 divided by 3 is 16 equals 0. So either 3x squared equals 0 or x squared minus 16 equals 0. Well, if that's the case, then either x equals 0 here, or x squared equals 16, and then we can use the square root procedure to get x equals plus or minus 4. So we actually have 3 solutions here. Let's check and make sure each of these is a solution. If we plug in 0, we get 3x to the 0 to the 4th equals 48, 0 squared. And we want to know, is that the same? Well, of course it is, because that's 0 and that's 0. So 0 equals 0. If we check these solutions, if we do plus or minus, so if we do 3 times 4 to the 4th equals 48, and we want to know, is that correct? Is that the same thing as 48 times 4 squared? On this side, we get 4 to the 4th is what? 4 to the 4th, I believe. Let me cheat a little bit. 4 to the 4th is 256. So we have 3 times 256. And 3 times 256 is 768. 68. Over here, we would have 48 times 16. Which is also 768, so that works as well. Negative 4 will be similar because the 4th power will make it positive, and the second power on this side will make it positive. So you actually end up with 768 equals 768 once again. So all 3 of those are solutions. Warning! There's a slight warning here that I want you to note. If you were to divide by x squared here, x squared at the start, you would lose the solution x equals 0. And this is essentially because x could be 0 here, so when you do that division, you're assuming x does not equal 0. So you'd actually lose that solution then. So just a warning, it's very dangerous to solve equations by dividing by variables. Here's another example of how we can use factoring. Here, let's go ahead and factor by grouping. So again, I said at the start of the video that anytime you have a polynomial equation equaling 0, factoring is a good idea. We can factor this by grouping. If we group, we get x cubed minus 3x squared plus, I like to keep the negative with it, just to be careful. If I factor out, here I can factor out an x squared times x minus 3. And over here I can factor out a negative 3. And that changes the sign there when I factor out a negative. So now I actually have x squared minus 3 times x minus 3 equals 0. That tells me that either x squared minus 3 equals 0 or x minus 3 is 0. Well, here I can do the square root procedure, and I get x squared equals 3. Take my own square root, I get x equals plus or minus square root of 3. Over here, if I take 3 to the other side, I get x equals 3. Okay, let's check both of those solutions. Checking, we get plus or minus root 3 cubed. I like to check the plus or minuses together, kind of based on the last example. You can see why. Minus 3 plus or minus root 3 plus 9. Here, the cube would preserve the sign, so I'd get a root 3 times a root 3 times a root 3. Two of those root 3's would cancel, so I'd get plus or minus 3 root 3. Here, root 3 and root 3, the sign will go away because of the 2. And so I'll get minus just 3 times 3. Here, I get minus plus 3 root 3 because it changes the signs. And here I get plus 9. Well, here we see that this, because these signs are opposite of these signs, those cancel. And here, the 9 and the 9 will cancel. The negative 9 and 9 will cancel, and so I get 0. So that does actually work. Now it's time for you to go ahead and try an example. So go ahead and solve each of the following 3 equations and check your answers. So on the count of 3, I'll reveal the solutions. 1, 2, 3. So here are the solutions. The most notable thing here is I didn't do any of the checks. I trust that you can do them. And I also ran out of room. That's the real reason. This one was just like the first equation I worked before. This one is very similar to the second equation I worked before. And this one is a little bit tricky in that you first can factor out a 3x. You end up with x equals 0 from that term. But from this term, it's actually a quadratic, so you need to use the quadratic formula. For more practice in solving these higher order polynomial equations, be sure to see page 857 and work numbers 73 through 76 in the textbook. And in our next video, we'll be talking about how to solve radical equations.